The woman.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good evening, and welcome to The Woman. I trust that you're all doing well out there today. My name is Priscilla Winkle, and I am not alone. With me, of course, are my two co-pilots. So first up is Miss EK. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm very well. It's good to be here as always, and I'm looking forward to the various conversations that we're going to have today. And there is a lot to talk about.
And so much has been going on.
I tell you.
And of course, our gorgeous Paula is in the house too.
Hello, good evening everybody. Welcome, welcome. Another week and lots of things to discuss in the news.
Fabulous. And joining us tonight as our guest panelist is our one and only Lexi Boahene. Good evening, Miss Lexi. How are you?
Good evening, Priscilla. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. It's always so nice to have you.
Likewise. It's a pleasure being here.
It's wonderful. We had her how many years ago?
Yeah.
And yet she looks so young.
She
doesn't look as if it's a day ago.
Thank you.
And yes, you are twinning.
We are, aren't we?
Absolutely.
We are. I quite like it. So, ladies, it's been an interesting time in the news this week. So, Robert Mugabe, after all the song and dance, the coup, non-coup, grace, no grace, the army.
Grace and no grace.
Yeah.
I like that one.
So, Mugabe finally resigned.
Like most African things, it's just a shuffle in the same seat, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's until we see what the outcome is before I'm going to start saying it was a good idea or a bad idea. But certainly, it was a good idea to have the change.
I wonder what your Zimbabwean friends would say about that.
I think they might agree with me. Disagree with me.
You know, one of the most interesting things I've discovered out of the whole thing that's been going on this week with Mugabe was there's been lots of publicity about his children and nephews and those that he's placed in different government positions and has had contracts with, and how they're squandering money.
I know.
And it's just overwhelming,
well,
you know.
So much information has come out because there was something on WhatsApp with all the 10 mansions that he's got. Yeah. And like you said about one of his children who had a £60,000 watch.
Well, they're living
in
Dubai, they're all over the world.
Just because he could. There were things that were said that his wife said, that's Grace, which were akin to something that Marie Antoinette said, in a way, about shoes. She said hers about shoes. I won't repeat that. But,
so, Lexi, what were your thoughts?
Do you know what? Interestingly enough, I don't understand why they're only talking about these things now, because clearly
it's been going on for
decades, and it was evident. But somehow now it's relevant, and somehow it needs to come up in the media, right? Like, why are we trying to...
Is it that is relevant? Because some people would say that Mugabe himself was, you know, there are people that say he wasn't corrupt. And if you go back to what the General Major Moyo said, you know, when he broke the news, as it were, you know, he said, President Mugabe and his family are safe and well, they're fine. We are only interested in those around him and the corruption. So it was very interesting that he made the statement in that way, as opposed to, you know when a coup occurs. So when you consider that statement and you think of all this, all of a sudden, blown out of all proportion. I know, you know, it was only Grace, Gucci Grace, as she was named, termed, you know, nicknamed. She was the only one that was reported to have just, like you said, Miss Ike, she has a great fetish for shoes.
Yes. And the amongst other things, for watches.
Exactly. Exactly. But you see, what always disappoints me is the way in which our leaders or people that get into these positions, the first thing that they're doing is to buy, squander the money, buy the houses, buy the jewelry, buy everything that their country does not produce.
And then their children as well don't have the education in the country. They don't use the health services within their own country.
They don't have the
They should be looking at at the infrastructure of their country.
Yeah, but they don't have the education in the country, and you would think that they would come back with something sensible. But it's as if they go and they get the worst possible behaviour that they can pick up, the worst kind of education that's totally meaningless. That's if they really go to school, or they just go and buy the certificate. I don't know.
But then also, like, what values are you really instilling in
Exactly.
the kids if you're portraying a certain image and you're making it seem okay?
But they're the people that they're learning it from are their parents.
It's interesting. And then we've been waiting for this budget to be announced. Everybody's been on tenterhooks, and finally our minister Philip Green told us, announced his budget. When we heard that, ladies, what did we think? Did we think hooray, or did we think, or did it just sort of it didn't make a difference, or were we just thinking?
Kind of washed over my head, to be honest, because as they've told us, we're in times of austerity, and it doesn't seem that has really lifted. They've already said there's still going to be a pay freeze for public sector workers, so no change there. We already know that the interest rates on mortgages went up a couple of weeks ago, so people are feeling the pinch there. I suppose one of the major areas was the stamp duty free, so that will possibly help people to get onto the property ladder.
Well, I don't know about that, because basically they were saying 300,000, up to 300,000, that you wouldn't pay stamp duty for first-time buyers. Oh, God.
But where can you buy properties for that much?
It's not enough. No, you're going too far and too fast.
No, but
we're talking about £300,000. How many black people in this country earn a six-figure sum? And I'm talking £100,000, so that maybe you only have to talk about 3 times your salary to try and cover that. I mean, that's what it used to be.
No, but that's
until it's sort of, is it?
But in the south anyway, you can hardly find any properties for that price.
No, you can't now. But the thing is that how many of your people are working in that kind of environment?
Well, I think we're all just going to have to move into the bush, aren't we, really?
Well, we are sending them into the bush, actually. Because basically, most families now are having to move out. And if you do sell up because you can't pay, you can only find a property in places like
the bushes.
No. Let's leave the word bush out of it, because if I start mentioning areas like Birmingham and Manchester, they'll come back at me. So
no, those are not bushes per se. But in every city, in every town, there are parts of it. There are parts of it. For want of a better word, we can call it a village. But it is a bush. Because it's not close to anything. And right now, and because it's not close to anything.
The funny thing is that when something does come close to it, like they put a railway in, suddenly
don't mention that, because I live in an area where apparently, because Crossrail is coming in, I mean, it is a joke.
But it should put the property prices up. So
I'm not
on the one hand, that's like
you said earlier on, you may get the money, but you can't buy anything in the same area. So where are you?
And then, of course, if they put in all these railways and you're a first-time buyer, how can you even afford
No, the first-time buyers are going to live in the bush.
Yeah, they have to go further out or do shared ownership or something, I think. And even shared ownership, to be honest, the amount you pay on the rent and the mortgage.
And that's still a lot of money that you're given. It won't be 100,000.
It doesn't work out that much cheaper when you do that shared ownership thing. It's ridiculous, but that happened. But then, so moving back to Africa again, there was some very I don't know how to describe this news, but it was really very sad that a young man was killed by his wife, allegedly, because she had a look through his mobile phone and found things that were not very agreeable to her.
And it won't be the last
time that the phone has caused so much trouble. I mean, at one point it was because you spent so much time on it, and people would lock their phones with their various pins. The joke like, of it, would you give your pin to your wife?
Yeah.
Things like that. But I mean, jokes aside, I don't think that there's any reason to go and kill somebody because of their relationship with somebody else. I mean, I think in this particular instance, if I'm correct, she was actually not a second wife, but the second wife, because the first one they had divorced or something, and she discovered that they were having another, relationship
Well, it depends
or
on,
talking
you know,
together
yeah.
or something. And then took some action that she didn't.
But domestic violence on either side is just, you know, there's no excuse for it. Talk less actually killing somebody and your spouse. Worst case scenario, just walk away from the
We keep
relationship.
saying that, but you know, this is not happening. And you know, the other thing that's quite tragic, or I'm noticing, is that women are becoming more violent. They're taking things into their hands and dealing with it there and then. Maybe is it that they're not trusting the law? I mean, in Nigeria, which is where this happened, is it because nothing would have been done to him? You know, who would you have complained to? His parents would
but
ask
I
you,
mean,
are you the first one?
But the question
You
is
know.
this, though. You know, like you said, she was the second wife.
Yes.
Was there a likelihood that whilst he was married, she was involved?
There's a great possibility.
So then to have such a standard thereafter, it's asking for a little too much, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, you know, he would have told her it's falling apart, darling.
Or
And
perhaps
we need
maybe
to,
he just wanted
and
a third
I
wife.
really need to get out of that situation, and you are the one. And so all the words would have been right, and we would, you know.
I don't think most women believe
that.
We've got to put.
You're so right. I forgot about those lines
you.
that, you know, always comes. You know, I've heard that. I've heard that
She
so
means
many
nothing
times.
to me.
Yeah.
It's over.
Or maybe
Yes.
he genuinely just
She
wanted a
just
third
want-
wife.
Yeah.
No,
but
initially,
If
if
she-
he had a
if
first
she
and she was
doesn't
a
put-
second,
yeah, then
a
it's
third was on the
possible.
They
way.
had a
Exactly.
right to have one within, I think, the custom that they belong
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So I don't understand this rivalry.
Perhaps she didn't want that particular girl. Who knows?
Didn't want a third person in the picture.
So, you know, our news has been extremely interesting this week. And then now that I'm just going to flip back very quickly to the Mugabe situation, because it's one thing for President Robert Mugabe to go after 37 years, and we think we applaud. And I must say, you know, we applaud the people of Zimbabwe for the peaceful nature, the peaceful way that they conducted themselves.
Yeah.
But, you know, like you touched on, Miss Ike, earlier, so now we have this the former vice president will be sworn in tomorrow as the president. You did mention it. Would it have been worth Mugabe going? Isn't it same old, same old?
To a certain extent, yes, it is still worth him going, because that shift needed to happen.
Mm.
And I would assume that, well, I don't know if I should assume that, but assume that they will have proper elections now conducted. And by the army saying, here, take it on board to do that, then I think that they are truthful in that they're not wanting to sort of do a coup and take over and become a military situation, which is what I think people... I know, but it was a change, but it needed to happen. And I think, I mean, there was a chap on WhatsApp who drank himself into oblivion. As a result, did you see
that one?
There's so many things.
Borderline alcoholic, I'm sorry.
I think he had issues, right?
I mean, it's astonishing
From the
that for many
onset.
Zimbabweans, they have only known, you know, the younger generation. They
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
have ever known him
Yeah.
as a president, so they've never seen that change. And I'm sure many of them wouldn't have even thought about getting into politics, because you can't even have that ambition of being the next president.
But it's good, and I
Yeah.
say congratulations to the people of Zimbabwe. And on that note, time doesn't permit us to continue. You know, there was so much more that had happened during the course of the week that we wanted to share, but we do have to move on. Well, we're going to go on a short break, but when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of the show. We did say last week that we're continuing with looking at aspects of this racial audit that the Prime Minister did. And within it, this week, we're looking at community and education. Our number is still 0288080693. It'd be great to hear from you. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The woman. The woman. The woman. The woman.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Our phone number is 0208 808 0693. And as I made mention, we're looking at this racial audit that the Prime Minister did. Nothing new to most of us within the black community. And if you were watching last week, you would have seen us discussing the aspect of the criminal justice system, especially in relation to our young men and women that are involved in knife and gun crime on what it seems like a weekly basis, and the impact of that. And let me once again say thank you to our guest who joined us, Janet Hill, from she's the chair of the Metropolitan Police Black Association. So, according to this racial audit report, black people, when it comes to community, are said to be, they're more likely to volunteer within the community than any other racial group, or they and white people are more likely to do that. Ladies, what did we think in that particular area? I note that I must say, I felt that it was a bit scanty.
There wasn't that much.
There wasn't,
was there?
yeah.
Really break down where they got the statistics from and in what voluntary sectors they were volunteering in, how they picked up their data.
And what areas.
Yeah.
But when we look at the whole report, it is really scanty. And it's more a situation where they're putting out feelers for us to make something of it. I said it last week that it's our responsibility as the black race who are affected by this report to actually take the points that are here that they've divided into and actually make something of it and tell them what we want.
Oh yeah,
I mean that really has to happen.
That's the whole point why we're doing this show, as you know, is to say, okay, now that this report is out, what is the solution? Let's offer, it's about offering a solution for what we're going to do for an improvement. So within the community, for instance, you can download this report at .gov.uk. Just put racial, ethnicity, racial
Disparity?
I'm just not getting my words right tonight, am I? So it's a racial disparity audit. So if you go to .gov.uk, you'll be able to download it. And then you'll be able to have a look at it. But what I found, as I mentioned earlier, the community, for instance, talks about country of birth. Yeah. So it sort of identifies, and then language. And then it moves on to social capital measures and participation by ethnic group. I would have expected the capital measures to be a bit more, because I'm assuming that that's talking about input of in terms of our contribution work-wise to society and all of that, financial and so on. But I found it, and personal well-being, I found it a little bit scanty.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the language, there were no surprises there. I think Black, African and Caribbean English tends to be quite a universal language. Absolutely. So that wasn't a surprise to me. Particularly when you compare it to, say, the Asians, where they may have English as their second language, and they tend to, even their children within the home, they don't actually teach them English until they go to school or so forth, so that they know their family spoken language, which is great as well. But in terms of the community, I was quite happy that that black people came up as being volunteering their services within the community. But I did want to know in what areas and how, because it wasn't clear whether it was in the wider community or whether it was just within the black community. So I know black people definitely, we volunteer services, for example, in Saturday schools, in clubs, in our own organisations.
I'm almost up in arms to say, why does that matter? As in the fact that we do go out there and do volunteering work. I think the painful part of it is that it's unpaid. And a lot of the things that we do as a community is always unpaid.
But it does show goodwill and good nature.
We have that as a people. We have that from our Christian backgrounds. A majority of us are Christians, not everybody, I do appreciate. But that is the nature, that is the way we operate.
And the
We
whole community feel of us, I
very,
suppose.
yes, absolutely.
Because back
Very
home
often,
we help each other within the
very
community.
often in workplaces, what I have found where I've gone to, it's actually we that actually give that warmth to the whole place and give some fun and some enjoyment in it. If we don't do the job to the letter of the law, in the sense that if, you know, you say that the job says don't talk to this person more than 5 minutes, we will talk to you for 10 minutes because we see that you need to be spoken to for 10
Oh,
minutes.
so it's an act of kindness.
No, it's an act of kindness. It's the warmth that we have. And you see, you know, I'm also looking at it with the what do you call it, the drop budget in mind. Unpaid, 300,000 to buy a house. Where's the money going to come from? No, you've got to start to put these things together. You know, that means that we're out completely.
Well, I
No room
wouldn't
for
say
us.
that, not necessarily, because I think that, you know, we are coming up, as it were. Lexi, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just going to add to, I agree, and fair enough, it might be in our nature, but when we go to, you know, these same workplaces, these same, you know, communal places, we're treated in a certain way, but we in a lot of occasions give the most. So how do we now measure these? One, how is it quantified in this statement? And then also, how do we
change it?
but how do we add benefits to some of the services that we provide?
Yeah.
Whether it's for free or
I mean, you know,
How do we actually get some capital gain
Yeah, but you know
from our
something?
services as well?
like she
Yeah.
rightly said, buy a house.
Yes, but I mean, I think that, like, for
Deposit down.
example, where we're doing voluntary work, a lot of people are doing it in order to get experience, to be able to try and get that one little job that you can try and get. A lot of these people have got children as well who are in school, for which they can't even afford at times to pay for their school fees. And if they create a system whereby they're receiving vouchers for the work they're doing, they're receiving some kind of compensation, meals, whatever it is, in order that they can actually look after their families or begin to rise up from this situation, that would be great. The reason why there's so many of us out there as well is because of the lingua franca.
Well, it's
You know?
interesting. What I found interesting was that this is saying that we're most likely to integrate.
Yeah.
But then the Social Integration Commission had a report in 2015. And in that report, it breaks down the different ethnic groups. And the different ethnic groups, according to them, are less likely to integrate. So I thought, well,
It's like integrate with each other.
integrate with others. So there's like for people of African Caribbean descent, is like minus 40% are likely to do that, and even within their, say, age 0 to 17 or something, it's also less are likely to integrate. Then you've got the Asians, about 43% likely, less likely to, minus, by the way, and you know it goes on, including white people, Caucasians too. So I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute, like we said earlier, what is the source of this new racial audit here? And then you've got the Social Integration Commission telling us something that is slightly different. Their report is more in depth because they looked at different areas and so on. It was published in 2015. But you know, you look at that and you're thinking, okay, so where did this come from? In terms of community, in relation to community, and looking at the areas that they've looked at, have they looked enough?
Yeah, I mean, I know that they did make a plea to public sectors, local authorities, voluntary organisations to provide their data. So I think they analysed all of that data, but I think it would be really useful for there to be a bit more depth to this and a bit more analysis provided to the wider public so we can understand
The area specific.
and what this means to us and what the advantages are, what the disadvantages are, and where we're not meeting the needs. So one of my particular issues with that community, and particularly the capital measures, was, are black people, although we're volunteering, are we actually seeing the any profitable gains? Because we know that the for example, the Asian community within the workplace, or should I say within community organisations. They have shops, they have enterprise, and we are consumers to a lot of their markets. If you're looking at, you know, markets, meat, hair products and so forth.
Yeah, but
Are the black community actually getting themselves involved and actually providing a service to the community, to the wider public?
I think it's changing as time is going on. But you know, we had this discussion before where we were looking at the fact that the way in which the Asian community hit London or hit England running is totally different from the way in which the black community, be it the African community or the Caribbean community, came into this country. We almost came in like an extra set of slaves. Almost.
Depends.
Because we came off the boat at Bully
because,
Rush.
well,
You know, like, that's one of the ways that we came into here.
one of the ways, but
And
they came to provide a service to the
But
NHS
still,
or
it's
to the rail.
providing a service. It's not making money. It's not being the people who are actually getting
So,
the capital. If I may, when the Asians came, a lot of them already had capital with which to start off. They were shop owners, they were business leaders. We weren't those things. We were workers.
Africans came for
Not
education.
necessarily.
And the Africans came for education.
Let's hear what
Sorry.
Alison
I honestly, like, I get the different aspects of where this conversation is going, but I guess moving forward, what we can do is educate our children to manage money, educate them about taxes, educate them about finances. It needs to be stipulated and embedded in our day-to-day conversations in our household. That's the only way we're going to be able to.
I absolutely agree.
That is a
Compete
wonderful
against it,
idea. And, you know, just a few weeks ago, we had on the program Dr. Arinola Areba, who brought in one of these games that she had actually created for enabling people to, you know, be money-wise, to be
teach
able
people about money.
to change their process and the way that they act with money. But the difficulty in which, you know, you would think that the government would be chomping at the bit to grab hold of that game, splash it out there, make sure everybody's actually using it, or any other facility like that. But no. And once
But how would they get their money?
no, but this is what I'm saying. That it's actually, if you're trying to go into the black community, use their services.
Let me explain. In as much as, you know, I hear what you're saying, Ms. Ike. We didn't come in that way.
Yeah.
In the 50s and 60s and even 70s, most who came in from Africa came in either already skilled or they came in to get an education.
Yes.
And the whole plan was to get an education and
to come back.
And they were not
They weren't
dependent.
bargaining on staying
They
here
were not
and having
dependent
community
on the
ties.
States.
And,
So whereas the Asians came to stay, it's a different thing. They came with the plan so that they would leave. But it would be great to hear from you. Do you feel a sense of belonging being here in the United Kingdom? Do you feel welcomed enough? What is your community like? Is it welcoming? Is it embracing? Do you feel a part of it? Do you feel that you volunteer sufficiently? Can you give more? Is there more that we can do? It'd be great to hear from you. Our number is 0208-808-0693. It's a very important conversation because we need to make the changes, if not for ourselves, at least for the generation to come. So we would like to know what you thought, what are your thoughts rather, on some of the issues that I raised. You know, the social capital measures, for instance, as has been mentioned, there isn't very much in that, you know, talks about majority across the ethnic group feel that they belong to Britain. Do you belong? Do you feel that way? Around 85% of white and Asian adults and around 80% of adults from black and mixed backgrounds felt that they belong to Britain, though the proportion of adults from other ethnic backgrounds who felt this was lower at 68. So in effect, what they're trying to say is that maybe those who belong to other ethnic backgrounds, perhaps the white Europeans, is what, you know, I would assume it was referring to here. But there isn't very much in there to sort of, you know, to speak more about our belonging. Then there's the whole personal well-being aspect of it. Again, very scanty, very little. It's talking more about there was little difference in the average ratings for men and women across most ethnic groups and well-being measures. Do you feel that, I know that a lot of people of African and Caribbean origin struggle with this code. Do you feel? I mean, that's a common ground. It's a common ground that a lot of the older generation don't feel so good with this weather. But we have a caller. We have Emmanuel on the line. Hi, Emmanuel. We can't hear you just yet. Emmanuel?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome to the program, sir. What's your contribution?
Think you. No, just further on from EK's point and your point. I think the truth of the matter is, as a black person, I don't really think we have a community here. And I think the point you made about the Asians coming here to stay is quite valid, because at the back of most black people's mind is, I'm here for a minute and I'm going home.
Yeah.
Now that may be a short minute or a long minute, but I'm going home. So I don't want to be a butcher. I don't want to sell weave. A lot of Africans come here to study. A lot of Africans come here to make money so that they can build a life back home somewhere further down the line.
Yeah.
Are we truly a community? I don't think so. I think we're just a group of individuals who've come here to get our hustle on and go home with something.
Wow.
So that's really what I feel. Maybe another generation will see
So do you feel a sense of belonging yourself?
No, I don't actually. No, I don't.
Oh.
You know something, I would agree with you, Emmanuel, because I remember growing up in this country.
Hang on, let me... Emmanuel, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you for the call. Please continue, Ms. Ike.
Okay. I'm taking everybody a long way back to buttress his point.
Yeah.
And the way I buttressed it, when I was very young, growing up here and going around with my parents to various houses and people living here in those days, people were living in, flats or just one room of a house. And in every single house, you would find a trunk box.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know what the trunk box is, we could have got a picture of it and put it out there, but there was a trunk box.
It was a metal
with the intention of leaving.
Going back.
We had trunk boxes in my house that went from floor to ceiling because we
And
were
it was always
leaving.
packed.
And it was packed with the best things you had because you were going back
They were
home.
postponing their happiness.
Yes. And so therefore there was no plan to stay, and as a result you didn't really know from day to day what was going to happen to you because you could leave at any moment. I don't know whether people had their stay and things like that, so that might have been part of the ongoing situation as well. So there was a hardship that was going on in those days. There was a serious hardship. And racism at its extreme.
Of course, but I mean, we still have that, down.
It's
still
different.
prevalent today, but it's in a different way. But it's definitely very prevalent today. But my story is slightly different. So I was born and raised here, but I've always felt a sense of belonging back home. Like when I'm at home, just talking about it's making me smile. When I'm at home, I feel like home, and I refer to it as home. Like this is again for me a stop shop. Like I'm here to learn and grasp and
No, but that's the way your parents brought you up,
perhaps,
isn't it?
Perhaps.
Did you go back quite frequently? Did you go on holidays?
I did.
So that
as a
probably
child,
helped,
I spent a lot of time out there, and I still do, and I do a lot of work out there. So I definitely have a connection. But I feel like a lot of the young people that are here anyway, still have that identity crisis, and as a result, they show it in many different ways. And the fact that their leaders, their educators, they aren't taught how to handle these emotions and how to handle these situations, and that alone brings a lot of issues. And that's something that's not spoken about in this audit.
Well, no, it won't be spoken about in this audit because it's scanty. But that's an issue for the community, isn't it?
It's an issue for the community, and in fact, it's an issue for almost every other chapter within this audit, because out of that identity crisis, we get the issues with exclusion and education and all the other kind of issues.
Prisons,
Exactly, the criminal justice system. It's all part of the identity. Where do I belong? I don't belong in Britain, and I don't feel like I could go and live back
that's
home.
a suggestion we should have.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment, Ms. Ike, only because of time. We're going to go on a break. When we come back, we'll continue with the point that you want to raise there. So stay with us. Our number is 028-808-0693. It'd be great to hear from you. Do you feel a sense of belonging? Do you always feel like you're going home? Do you have trunk boxes? Anyway, we'll be right back See you soon.
The woman. The woman.
Every culture and society has its differences. Yes, we are different, but united in one nation.
It's time for us to gather together.
I'm saying yes, because yes means positivity.
I say yes to a better healthcare system because nobody's life should have to be cut short for things that can easily be fixed.
Join the movement. Say yes to a better Nigeria.
Yes to a better creative industry because it will boost our economy and make our country greater.
I'm saying yes, we can do it. About road, we can do it. About infrastructures, we can do it. Good education, yes, we can do it.
Join the movement. Say yes to a better Nigeria.
Yes to a better Nigeria.
Join the evolution by visiting the website at www.yesnigeria.org.
The woman.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. If you've just joined us, we're still discussing that racial disparity audit that the Prime Minister commissioned earlier this year. This report came out about a month or so ago. And, you know, really, it's aimed at trying to find solutions for a better integrated United Kingdom that reflects the different ethnic groups that are. If you live in London, for instance, you would have noted that it's a metropolitan city that you turn every corner and there is somebody from a different ethnic group, from a different race that exists and lives in this great city of ours. And I'm sure it's the same in other bigger cities right across the country too. But so you know, but we do know that racism has been a huge, you know, problem for those who are not of Caucasian origin, or even those who are of Caucasian origin but are not from the United Kingdom. We know that people from Eastern Europe have had not a very kind experience, especially since this whole Brexit vote recently. We're seeing a lot more of that sort of bias and prejudice towards them. So we're having a look at this report, discussing it, and trying to find solution. What do you think we can do better? What can we suggest to the Prime Minister? Tonight, like I said, if you've just joined us, we're talking about education and community. We've just looked at the community, and we're going to go into the educational aspect of it. But before we went on the break, Ms. Ike, you had a point to raise.
I was going to raise the point about well-being and saying that the various communities are acting very differently because the Asian community, which has shown a little bit more feeling of well-being, is because they brought their entire families with them. Yeah. A lot of the black communities that came across just came 1 or And so you feel very lost. And if you're having children, who's going to take care of the children? So it then starts to affect your financial wealth, how you're going to make money, where you're going to leave the children, and all the other things that started to happen where we were fostering our children how in order
So
to
that
get
it could work.
educated.
Yeah.
And it was destabilizing our lives because the other thing is that you had other cultures inputting into your children and changing the psyche of the way in which we were operating. And these kind of things, you know, it's when you start to sort of pull the pieces together that you realize that we're very disparate and sort of broken down. And in some ways, we need to sort of have a good look at ourselves and start to make differences.
That's a lot. We have Sam on the line. Hi, Sam. Sam?
Hello?
Hi, Sam. Welcome to the program, sir. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from England.
Great. And what's your contribution tonight?
Yeah. My contribution is all about, you know, because you guys were talking about, you know, if we feel sense of belonging. And,
yes.
You know, one thing I want to say to the program is that, you know, because I've come to realize that, you know, we from Africa, you know, we don't really show love to each other. And as a result of that, you know, a lot of people, they find it difficult to associate with each other, you know. But when you look at the other community, you see that they show love to each other. And as a result of that, they feel belong with each other. But we from Africa, you know, sometimes you see your fellow black person, you try to ask him a question, it's not there. But you go to these white people, they are there for you. So sometimes, you know, when you look at it, it's something that I want you people to discuss. Issue of love within the black community, I think that will make us to feel sense of belonging.
Sam.
Thank you so much.
Sam, before you go, and I appreciate, thank you for that contribution. You know, you pointed something out there. But, you know, this is also, the black community is also that community where people come together. You know, the Yoruba community, we do Ashobi. We're always having some kind of women's thing, men's that, this group, school this, that group. We're always coming together. We have a lot of parties, you know, we have a lot of that. Would you say that there was no love in that coming together? Oh, Sam's gone.
We've lost that. And I feel like he's potentially talking about, I guess, perhaps in times of hardship, maybe people aren't around as much for, you know, their fellow Africans.
I mean, it has been said that, you know, there is a lot of division and there needs to be more unity within our black communities, between the Caribbeans and the Africans as well. You know, if we put ourselves together, we'll actually be a stronger source. You know, there's talk of the Black Wall Street. Why not? You know, why can't we help ourselves?
It once existed.
Absolutely, and it can again. Why can't we consume from our own communities and build ourselves up? As for those Ashoebi and all those Owambe parties, I'm sorry, I wouldn't really say that they're a loving environment all the time. It's more often, I think, more of a can I get one up on you? Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses, as it were.
Well, I think going back to what you're talking about, us consuming from each other and assisting each other, one of the things that we have trouble with is that we haven't actually become very cohesive. We haven't actually appreciated each other and what we can actually work together. There's no leadership that is saying, you know, come together, let's do this and let's do it together, because basically we're almost afraid to do it. No, look at it this way. The Jewish community has no problems dealing with themselves and you know, buying from themselves. The Asian community has no trouble with that. The Chinese community has no trouble. The white community has no trouble, but the black community does. And that is, I think, part of that thing that he was saying, that we don't love each other. Because it's as if to say, if you come and you're going to sell me something, I'm afraid to take yours. Because it's like, you've overpriced, or I can get it cheaper.
I'm not valuing our skill to the point that we will even ask, can you lower the price, or can you do the service for free? Why should the service be free?
They want us to help each other And it's
So-
like, oh, but you're my brother.
Yeah.
But there's that sense of value that we're
Expectations.
missing.
Yeah.
But you know, on the before we lose sight of the educational aspect of the report, you know, it talks about the fact that the percentage of, say, 5-year-olds that are achieving good levels of development for black children, that percentage is at something like 65. And then, and it's interesting to note, it also talks about those who are more likely to have free school dinners, and you have, once again, black children are the ones that are most likely to have free school dinners. And then the attainment and economic disadvantages. Low educational attainment and progress is closely associated with economic disadvantage, and again, this affects us more than it does some of the other ethnic groups. In terms of attainment of, I've done the school dinners,
The
pardon me
free
there.
school meals and the food aspect is really, really key to a child's education level. Because if they are well fed, they are prepared to learn and they will concentrate. And then you see, because later on in the report, it talks about black people excelling. So can you imagine that if you put the finances properly in place and you put the food aspect and the proper nutrition, we're going to...
But I think the report is actually identifying that those on free school meals, FSM, are the most vulnerable, and that's part of the you know, that's part of a poverty issue.
Absolutely.
So then that's saying that perhaps black people are in the lowest percentage of those with finances and
We're still saying
income.
the same thing, that if you are in that category, you're not going to be well fed, and your ability to excel at school is going to, you know, go awry. Plus your behaviour.
I don't know whether it's saying that you wouldn't be well fed. I think it's just that the finances aren't there, so you're in the most vulnerable category. But at the same time, the black African children are doing quite well educationally. Particularly, you know, the African children, they're excelling, like you said.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that if we can create a consistency from very young, we will continue to get good results. And I'm also trying to put it akin to the fact of it can affect the behaviour, and that takes us into the exclusion and things like that that is happening.
I do think that we can't ignore. It's all one. It's very good that the report says one thing, but we can't ignore the reality, and the reality is the unconscious bias that our children
and
face
there
in
is
schools.
institutionalized racism up until
That's
today,
it. And you know, and there were talks recently about the grades as well, and the fact that, you know, children tend to be, you know, they're marked down because of their ethnicity,
I mean,
and not because of their ability.
I tend to look at it as the racial narrative for the black person is totally different from the narrative for the Asian or the Chinese.
Absolutely.
There is an expectation that the Chinese is going to, you know, really excel, do well. So they encourage that because also they get they get additional money for that success in the school. So it pays them, in actual fact, to actually get rid of the black child who is not performing or is not being encouraged to perform because they don't want to have their grades.
So then what do we do going forward? Because obviously we can't continue to have our children being excluded just because of their ethnicity. It doesn't change their ability, the fact that they, you know, they have the ability, because obviously we see that coming, you know, as they get older. We see that they are more likely to be the high achievers. They're more likely to be the ones that are going to university. They're more likely to be the ones that want to do more. So, you know, going forward, what then does the country have to? I know that the issue of racism is there, but practical things that needs to happen going forward to make that change right from age 5 and upwards.
Well, in terms of education, you know, I think we really, the report isn't really going into it in that much depth, but I think we really need to break down the factors. Black African children are still excelling. So how are they excelling and for what reasons? Despite the fact that they may still be on those free school meals, which is the disadvantaged group, they're still placing education very high. So I think we need to be our brother's keeper, absolutely, and make sure that we're pulling the other black and mixed black groups along with us in terms of that educational attainment.
Yeah, that's where Sam was talking about us loving each
other. Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
we need to combine ourselves and unify ourselves.
Sometimes when you're trying to do that, they're saying, you know, it's as if to say you've got some kind of thing to gain. It's, you know, negative. In fact, we have a narrative that we have for ourselves. And I think that also pulls us back.
Indeed. But Lexi, I know that you're going back home soon.
Yes, home.
And as you made mention earlier, you work between both places. You have an event coming up, and it's for the young people.
It is.
Tell us about it.
So we have an event called Diaspora Drive happening in Accra on the 22nd of December. Wow. So if anyone's around Ghana at all.
What is Diaspora Drive?
So part of the president's mandate is to engage more people in the diaspora to move back home. And as a HR recruitment consultant, we want to help enable them with, you know, jobs that are available. And, and we're inviting companies to come and see the diverse diasporan candidates that we have.
Well, that sounds really good. But one of the problems that diasporans have, and it matters not which African country they go to or they're from, is that they get there and all the promises just sort of evaporate.
That does exist, but you need to keep at it. So what happens is you get overwhelmed. Because it's a very different environment. It's a very, like, the expectations are high. So, you know, you just have to keep going. You have to keep your momentum. And then also you need to diversify. So let's say you're really good at something, or you've gone there with the expectation of it. You need to be able to do other
vary
things.
your skills.
So if you remember back in the day, what our grandparents and our mothers were doing, they were selling here, they were selling this, they were selling there, they were selling in the market. They were doing a variety of things.
In some ways, they have to change their whole way that they think about
precisely.
work.
And when you're in a place like this, you get, you know, you get comfortable and narrow-minded, and you know, it's the only way that you can make money is by working 9 to 5 and studying hard. Yes, that works, and you gain a lot of experience. But you know, there's so much more out there.
And I think a lot of our young youth need to know that and know what opportunities are out there.
So what date in Accra?
So it's on the 22nd, Friday the 22nd of December. We will hopefully have a press release prior to that, and we would invite you guys.
Yes. To the press release. Don't get too excited.
Not to Ghana.
So Accra it is.
Yes, Accra.
Oh, it's no biggie. 6 hours. Yeah. Well, ladies, what can I say? What is our last word? Time's up. Lexi, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Congratulations. And well done on all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Diaspora Drive is happening in Accra from the 22nd of December. Ms. Ike, very quickly, your last word.
The audit report may be light in content in terms of the detail, but it's for us to flesh it out, and I would really love that everybody becomes involved in it. Get a copy, read it. You know, we can't be sitting down and saying, you know, why haven't they? Who's they? It's time we.
I'll keep mine short and sweet.
Very short.
Absolutely. We're going to continue with this race audit report at some point. There's so much more to explore there, and make sure you read it.
Well, what can I say? Thankful to all of you that tune in every week. To Emmanuel and to Sam, we appreciate your calls. We will be back next week, and I hope that you can join us. And we're still going to look at how racism affects us in our community, society, schools, and so on. So stay with us. Enjoy your evening. Good night.
The woman.